Good evening, dear dreamer, and welcome back to a new episode of Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we'll be gently journeying through the remarkably vast, yet soothingly distant tale of Genghis Khan's extraordinary life. We'll explore his humble beginnings on the Mongolian steppes, his methodical unification of nomadic tribes, his calculated expansion across continents, and his enduring legacy that shaped the modern world, all at a pace designed for peaceful slumber. Before we begin this tranquil expedition, perhaps take a moment to settle comfortably, appreciating your quiet sanctuary so vastly different from the windswept yurts of 13th century Mongolia. I hope this richly detailed story brings you both a calming historical perspective and a deep, restful drowsiness as you drift into peaceful dreams. Last but not least, please also consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video, but only if you truly enjoy it, and comment where you are listening from and which time it is there. It's always fascinating to hear all the different places you listen from. Enough talk from me. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and enjoy today's video. Step softly now. The grass beneath your feet remembers horses past, and the hush of a million nights just like this one. We're far, far away, in a land of endless sky and rolling plains, the great Mongolian steppe. Can you feel the cool night air? It carries the scent of wild thyme and distant smoky campfires. Listen closely. The wind, they say, whispers the oldest stories here, and tonight it whispers of a beginning. Imagine, if you will, a sturdy circular dwelling, a gur, its felt walls holding back the vastness of the night. Inside, it's surprisingly cozy. Lamplight flickers, casting dancing shadows on the lattice woodwork. The air is thick with the smell of boiled mutton, warm milk, and the comforting aroma of dried dung burning in the central hearth, the heart of the home. It's a practical sort of perfume, really, when you think about it. Keeps you warm when the steppe winds howl their lonely songs. Outside, the stars are scattered like a careless handful of diamonds on black velvet. So many stars. You could try to count them, but you'd be asleep long before you made a dent. Which is, of course, the general idea. It's sometime around the year 1162, by the reckoning of other lands. Here, on the banks of the Onon River, time flows differently. It's measured in seasons, in the migration of herds, in the birth of new life. And on one such day, or perhaps night, the stories are a little hazy on the exact hour, as important arrivals often are. A baby is born. His mother is Hoelun, a woman of spirit and resilience, recently joined to a man named Yesuge. Yesuge is a chieftain, a leader of a small clan called the Kiad Borjigin. Not a mighty king, mind you, not yet. More of a respected local manager of nomadic affairs. He's known for his bravery and perhaps a certain ambition that glints in his eyes like sunlight on river ice. One has to be ambitious, after all, when your front yard stretches to the horizon and your neighbors are competitive. This newborn boy, they'll call him Temujin. It means blacksmith or of iron. A strong name, a practical name. Though, as with many things in this land of open skies and hidden meanings, there might be more to it. Some say he was named after a Tatar warrior his father had recently bested in a disagreement. Giving your son the name of a defeated foe, a bit like naming your new puppy victory over next door's noisy dog. A statement, certainly. Now, here's a detail that the storytellers love, and you can almost hear them leaning in, their voices dropping to a conspiratorial whisper around a crackling fire. When little Temujin was born, they say he clutched something in his tiny right fist. Not a rattle, not a stray piece of felt. A blood clot, a dark, congealed speck the size of a knucklebone. An unusual birth gift, wouldn't you agree? The shamans, the wise ones who read the signs in the smoke and the flight of eagles, they nodded gravely. This, they murmured, was a sign, a portent. This child was destined for something significant, perhaps something rather world-altering, though they probably didn't have the brochures for that printed just yet. Most babies just come with 10 fingers and 10 toes. Temujin apparently opted for an early hint of a dramatic future. Life on the steppe is a constant dance with the elements. The summers are fierce and brief, the winters long and biting. You learn to be tough. You learn to ride a horse almost before you can walk. Your cradle songs are the whinny of mares and the creak of saddle leather. Your playground is a vast, unfenced wilderness where the wind is your constant companion, sometimes a playful friend, sometimes a harsh teacher. For now, Temujin is just a babe, wrapped snugly in furs and felt, unaware of blood clots or destinies. He knows only the warmth of his mother, the rhythm of the nomadic life, the scent of wood smoke and horse. The sky above his family's ger is immense, a deep, comforting blue by day, that brilliant, starry black by night. It's the same sky that's above you now, though perhaps a little less crowded with city lights. His father, Yesuge, watches him. What does a clan leader dream of for his son? Perhaps a good life. Many horses, fat sheep, loyal followers. Maybe a slightly larger territory, a bit more respect from the neighboring clans who were always ready for a spirited discussion about grazing rights. Standard ambitions for a steppe nobleman, really. Did he look at that tiny fist and see empires? Unlikely. He probably just hoped the boy wouldn't be too much trouble. Oh, the gentle irony of parental hopes. So, there he is. Temujin, a small speck of humanity in a vast, sprawling land, a new thread in an ancient tapestry. The wind whispers his name, carrying it out over the grasslands, towards the distant mountains, towards a future no one can yet imagine. Not even the wisest shaman, with the clearest smoke signals. And as the camp settles for the night, the fires burn low, and the only sounds are the soft breathing of sleepers and the distant calls of night creatures. You too can settle. Let the vastness of that ancient steppe soothe you. There's a strange comfort in picturing that tiny baby, isn't there? A reminder that even the grandest, most world-shaking stories have the quietest of beginnings. And sleep easier knowing your ger isn't pitched on disputed territory tonight. The stars above shine peacefully, no matter how many lands were once ridden beneath them. Rest now. Let's drift quietly now, like smoke from a morning fire, back to the rolling hills beside the Onon River. The sun is just beginning to paint the eastern sky with soft hues of apricot and rose. Can you hear the sounds of the camp stirring? A gentle cough from a nearby ger, the soft nickering of horses greeting the dawn, the distant bleating of sheep. It's a new day on the steppe, and for young Temujin, another day of, well, being a young boy on the steppe. He's growing, as children do, from a babe with a curious fist into a sturdy lad. Life is his schoolmaster, and the lessons are very hands-on. Forget classrooms and chalkboards. Temujin's lessons involve learning to read the weather in the clouds, to find the best grazing spots for the family's herds, and of course, the most crucial skill of all, horsemanship. You and a horse, on the steppe, were a single entity, like toast and butter, but much faster and more essential for survival. He'd have a small, sturdy pony, no doubt. one that could withstand a few undignified tumbles as he learned to cling on with his knees, to guide with subtle shifts of weight. He'd learned to use a miniature bow, his small arrows perhaps fletched with feathers found along the riverbank. Target practice might involve unfortunate rodents, or perhaps just a well-placed tuft of grass. Every skill learned was a step towards becoming a capable member of the clan, a provider, a protector. It's a lot of responsibility for small shoulders, but responsibility arrives early when your world is made of wind, grass, and the occasional hungry wolf. The Onan River is his playground and his pantry. He'd fish in its cool waters, watch the birds dive and soar, learn the rhythm of its seasons. His world is one of close-knit family ties, but also one of shifting clan loyalties. His father, Yesuge, is often away, engaged in the complex diplomacy of the steppes, part negotiation, part carefully calibrated intimidation, and often involving a shared bowl of arag, fermented mare's milk. An acquired taste, arag, but it certainly lubricated many a political discussion. Now, Yesuge, being a practical man with an eye for the future, decides it's time for young Temujin, perhaps around the age of 9, to be betrothed. 9 years old. Can you imagine picking out your life partner before you've even mastered long division? Different times, different priorities. This wasn't about romance as much as it was about alliances. A good marriage could mean peace with a neighboring clan, shared resources, a stronger position in the ever-shifting power dynamics of the region. It was strategic networking, with a lifelong commitment attached. So, Yesuge sets off with Temujin to find a suitable bride. Tradition dictated that a bride should come from a different clan, and Yesuge had a particular connection with the Ongirat tribe, his late wife's people. The Ongirat were known for their beautiful and capable women, and also, conveniently, for not being too far away. Always a plus when travel is by horseback. As they journey, Yesuge tells Temujin something rather important. The women of the Ongirat clan, he might have said, his voice rumbling with fatherly advice, are fair of face and bring good fortune. They don't squabble over much, which is a blessing in any girl. Practical advice for a future husband. They arrive at the encampment of De Sechen, a leader of the Ongirat. And there, Temujin meets a young girl named Berte. She's a year or so older than him, described in the stories as having a bright countenance and intelligent eyes. Perhaps they exchanged shy glances. Perhaps they sized each other up with the curious, solemn gravity of children involved in very adult affairs. She seems nice, Temujin might have thought, and she doesn't look like she'd steal my best arrow. De Sechen is agreeable to the match. Berte, it seems, has also made a good impression. Arrangements are made. Dowries are discussed, though not in front of the children, of course. That would be like discussing the catering budget at a toddler's tea party. And then comes the rather interesting custom. Temujin is to stay with Berta's family for a while. A sort of premarital internship. He would learn their ways, and they would get to know him. It was a way to weave the bonds of the alliance a little tighter, to ensure the young couple might actually tolerate each other before the final vows. Yesuge, his fatherly duty on the path to completion, prepares to leave Temujin with his new in-laws, to-be. He entrusts his son to their care, gives him some final words of advice, probably along the lines of, behave yourself, listen to your elders, and try not to cause an intertribal incident before I get back. He then turns his horse and begins the journey home, perhaps feeling a sense of satisfaction. One son, successfully on the path to a solid alliance. So, young Temujin is left in a new place, with new faces. Imagine that feeling. A little lonely, perhaps a little apprehensive, but also with that quiet resilience that the steppe instills. He has his duties, chores around the Ongirat camp, learning new customs, always observing, always learning. The days are filled with the rhythm of nomadic life, herding, milking, the preparation of food, the mending of gear, and perhaps quiet moments getting to know Bertie, sharing stories, or simply existing in that companionable silence that children sometimes share. The vast steppe sky stretches above him, the same sky he knew from his own home, a comforting continuity in a world of change. The wind still whispers its secrets, though perhaps with a slightly different accent here in the Ongirat lands. He is learning that the world is larger than his own small clan, that there are many jurs, many herds, many ways of doing things, all under that same enormous sky. And as he settles into his new temporary life, far from his mother and siblings, a small boy making his way in a world that demands much, you too can settle into the quiet of your own space. Think of the security of knowing your place, even if it's just for a little while, the comfort of routine, the quiet promise of a future connection. Sleep now, little strategist. The politics of the steppe can wait until morning. And rest assured, your betrothal negotiations are likely far less complicated tonight. The wind seems to carry a different tune tonight, doesn't it? A little sharper, perhaps, with a hint of melancholy. Let's follow that sound back to the steppe, where fortunes can turn as quickly as a startled horse. Our young Temujin is still with the Ongirat, learning the ropes of being a future son-in-law when news arrives. News that will change everything. His father, Yesuge, on his journey home from arranging Temujin's promising future, had stopped to share a meal with a group of Tatars. Now, sharing food on the steppe is a deeply ingrained custom, a sign of peace and hospitality. But the Tatars and Yesuge's people had a history, a rather tangled and unhappy one, full of old grudges and remembered wrongs. It was like inviting your arch-rival to dinner and hoping they'd forget you'd relabeled all their favorite possessions. The story goes that the Tatars, recognizing Yesuge, harbored ill intent. They subtly introduced something harmful into his food or drink. A slow-acting trouble. Yesuge, unsuspecting, continued his journey, but soon fell gravely ill. He managed to reach his own camp, but his strength was fading fast. The vibrant clan leader, the ambitious father, was struck down not in the heat of a skirmish, but by a quiet, insidious treachery. A rather stark reminder that not all dangers on the steppe announce themselves with a war cry. Word of Yesuge's passing reaches Temujin. He is young, perhaps only 9 or 10 years old. He must immediately leave Berthe and her family and rush back to his own people, to his widowed mother Hoylen and his younger siblings. The betrothal, so carefully arranged, now hangs by a thread. His world, which had just begun to expand with promise, suddenly shrinks with a terrible, chilling finality. He arrives to a scene of grief and disarray. But worse is to come. Yesuge had been the linchpin holding his small group of followers together. With him gone, the delicate balance of loyalty and obligation crumbles. The Taichud clan, kinsmen but also rivals, decide that supporting Yesuge's widow and young children is inconvenient. Too much bother, really. In a move of shocking callousness, they abandon Hoylen and her children. They pack up their gurs, gather their herds, and simply ride away, leaving one grieving woman and her young family, Temujin, his brothers Kasar, Kachiun, Temuge, his sister Temulun, and Yesuge's other wife Sochigel, with her two sons, Befter and Belgute, utterly alone on the vast, indifferent steppe. Can you picture that desolation? One day, part of a bustling clan; the next, outcasts with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the wild, empty land stretching in every direction. It was the steppe equivalent of being unfriended, uninvited, and having your shared streaming services cancelled all at once. Holan, however, is a woman of incredible fortitude. She doesn't collapse in despair, though she must have felt its icy touch. She rallies her children. They have no herds to sustain them, no warriors to protect them. So, they survive as best they can. They become foragers, scavengers. Hulan teaches them to dig for wild roots and tubers, to gather berries and hunt for small game, marmots, field mice. Temujin, the boy who was to be a respected son-in-law, now fishes in the Onon River not for sport, but for survival, crafting his own hooks and lines. Imagine the shame, the bitterness. From a chieftain's son to a pariah, scrabbling for scraps. He wasn't collecting accolades just yet, mostly wild onions and the occasional edible grub. These are the years that forge iron in the soul, or break it. The harsh sun beats down, the winter winds cut to the bone. Every day is a struggle for existence. The memory of his father, the warmth of the Ongirat camp, the promise of Berthe, it must have all seemed like a distant dream. During this time, there is a poignant story about a sable cloak. When Yesuge was alive, and Holan was his cherished new wife, she had brought with her a beautiful sable cloak as part of her dowry. A symbol of status, of warmth, of a more prosperous past. Now, in their poverty, this cloak is one of their few remaining treasures. It represents everything they have lost. It's a reminder of security, of respect, of a life stolen away by betrayal and the harsh realities of clan politics. One can imagine Holan carefully preserving it, a tangible link to dignity in a world that had stripped them of almost everything else. That cloak, you feel, will be important later. Good things, like good cloaks, have a habit of reappearing when you least expect it. The vast, uncaring steppe becomes both their prison and their provider. It offers the wild onions that keep starvation at bay, but also the endless horizon that underscores their isolation. The resilience of a good horse is a distant memory. Now, their own feet are their primary mode of transport, and often bare. The nights are cold, and the comfort of a warm gur filled with loyal kin is replaced by makeshift shelters and the constant gnawing of hunger. Yet, through it all, something is hardening within Temujin. A resolve, a keen understanding of loyalty and disloyalty. He is learning about human nature in its rawest form. He's observing who shares their meager findings, who hoards, who despairs, who endures. These are lessons not taught in any Ongirat curriculum. These are the lessons of the wilderness, etched into him by hardship. And as you lie in the comfort of your own bed, warm and secure, think of that small, desperate family. Reflect on how even the most difficult times can pass, how resilience can become a quiet, unyielding strength. The memory of that stolen security, that stolen sable cloak, will fuel a fire that the steppe has not yet seen. But for now, let the image of their struggle soften into a sense of peace for you. Their hardship is a story of the past, a testament to the strength that can be found in the deepest adversity. And sleep easier knowing that your own treasures, big or small, are safe tonight. The stars above are witness to all stories, the grand and the humble, and they blanket all in their silent, watchful light. Rest now. Let's tiptoe through the tall grasses, shall we? The dew is still fresh on the blades, and the morning mist clings to the hollows. Someone rather important is trying not to be seen, and we wouldn't want to give him away. Our young Temujin is growing older, leaner, and considerably wiser in the harsh school of the wilderness. And he's about to learn some very practical lessons in the art of evasion and alliance building. Life for Holon's family remains precarious. The Taichudes, those charming relatives who abandoned them, haven't quite forgotten them. Perhaps they see the young Temujin, now a rapidly growing teenager, as a potential future threat. A seed of vengeance, perhaps, that they'd rather not see sprout. It's always awkward when the people you've wronged start looking capable. So, one day, the Taichudes decide that Temujin is becoming too much of a loose end. They send out a party, and after a chase through the woods and hills he knows so well, they capture him. Not the glorious capture of a mighty warrior, mind you. More like the weary netting of a creature they deem a nuisance. Temujin, for all his resilience, is still just a youth, outnumbered and outmaneuvered. His captors place him in a kangu, a heavy wooden yoke, a portable stockade that fits around the neck and wrists. Imagine wearing your writing desk as a fashion accessory. It's cumbersome, humiliating, and makes even the simplest tasks, like swatting a mosquito or enjoying a quiet nap, incredibly difficult. He is paraded among their camps, a trophy of sorts, a warning to any who might think of challenging Taichude authority. Captured? Again? You can almost hear him sigh to himself, if he had the breath for it. This is becoming a rather inconvenient hobby. But Temujin is not one to simply accept his fate, especially when it involves uncomfortable neckwear. He observes. He waits. He is learning that direct confrontation isn't always the answer, especially when you're wearing several pounds of uncooperative timber. One night, during a Taichude feast where his guard is perhaps a little too focused on the roasted meats and irag, Temujin sees his chance. Using the cover of darkness and the general merriment, he makes a daring escape. He plunges into the Onan River, the very same river that has been his companion through hardship and childhood. The kangui is a terrible burden in the water, threatening to drag him under. But he uses it, almost like a grotesque float, hiding amongst the reeds, submerging himself until only his nostrils break the surface, listening as his pursuers search angrily along the riverbanks. It's a masterclass in stealth, born of desperation and a strong desire not to be recaptured. During this perilous time, help comes from an unexpected quarter. A man named Sorgan Shira, from the Suldas tribe, who was among the Taichude, sees Temujin hiding. He has seen the boy's spirit, perhaps felt a pang of sympathy, or maybe he just didn't like the Taichude leadership very much. Whatever his reasons, he doesn't give Temujin away. Later, Sorgan Shira and his family help Temujin, hiding him in a cart full of wool, a wonderfully itchy but effective hiding place, and eventually enabling his complete escape. A small act of kindness, a moment of courage, can change the course of a life, can't it? Temujin would never forget Sorgan Shira's help. He was already learning that loyalty, true loyalty, was a rare and precious commodity, far more valuable than any sable cloak. He filed that away, probably under people who are not terrible. It's around this time, or perhaps a little earlier, that Temujin forges another significant bond, one that will shape his early adulthood, his friendship with a young man named Jamuka. Jamuka is of the Jadaran clan, a charismatic and capable youth, much like Temujin himself. They had known each other as children, played games together, perhaps hunted together. Now, as young men navigating the complex and often treacherous world of steppe politics and survival, they rediscover their connection. They become Anda, blood brothers. This isn't just a casual friendship, like sharing your lunch or lending a spare arrow. Becoming Anda is a sacred oath, a bond of brotherhood sworn to be as strong or even stronger than ties of blood relation. They exchange gifts, perhaps a knucklebone from a prized hunt or a well-made arrowhead. They swear oaths of loyalty, to support each other, to be true companions through thick and thin. For a time, they are inseparable, their small bands of followers joining together, sharing camps, sharing dreams. It must have been a comforting time for Temujin, after so much loss and isolation, to have a trusted friend, an equal, by his side. Someone who understood the weight of the sky and the call of the wind. The steppe, you see, could be a lonely place. But with a good horse under you and a true Anda beside you, even the vast emptiness could feel like home. They hunted together, perhaps even engaged in a little light, well-intentioned raiding, a common pastime for ambitious young men looking to increase their herds and their reputations. Nothing too serious, just the nomadic equivalent of a spirited corporate takeover on a much smaller, horse-powered scale. These experiences, the escape from the Taichuds, the kindness of Sorghum Shira, the profound bond with Jamuka, are all shaping Temujin. He is learning who to trust, how to lead, how to survive not just the elements, but the even more unpredictable currents of human ambition and betrayal. He's realizing the value of a few good friends, especially when so many relatives seem intent on making your life difficult. Steppe inconveniences, like being tied up or hunted by your own kin, certainly encouraged a proactive approach to networking. And as the moon casts its silvery glow over the quiet plains, think of the comfort of true friendship. That feeling of having someone who understands, someone who stands with you, a safe haven in a sometimes bewildering world. It's a warmth much like pulling a soft blanket around you. So, rest now, little survivor. May your own friendships be strong and true, and may your only captors be the gentle arms of sleep. No wooden yokes for you tonight, only soft pillows. The air is a little crisper now, isn't it? There's a scent of determination on the wind, and perhaps the faint, distant aroma of a long-delayed wedding feast. Let's ride with that wind, back to Temujin, who is no longer a boy, but a young man, hardened by adversity, and beginning to gather the first threads of his own destiny. Years have passed since his father's passing and the subsequent, rather abrupt, end to his stay with the Ongirat. He has endured hardship, capture, and the constant struggle for survival. He has forged a powerful bond of blood brotherhood with Jamuka, and together their small band of followers is growing. Temujin is starting to make a name for himself, not as a chieftain's son, but as a leader in his own right, known for his tenacity and, increasingly, his charisma. He didn't have a fancy LinkedIn profile, but word got around the steppe. And through all these turbulent years, one thing has remained in the back of his mind. Berta, his betrothed. The girl with the bright countenance from the Ongirat clan. It was time, he decided, to see if that old promise still held. It was a bold move. He wasn't exactly arriving with a vast retinue and overflowing coffers. His main assets were a growing reputation, a loyal Anda, and a rather compelling backstory of overcoming extreme difficulties. So, Temujin, accompanied by his brother Belgute, sets out to find Berta and her family. It's a journey of hope, but also of uncertainty. Would they even remember him? Would her father, De Sechen, still honor a betrothal made so long ago to the son of a now deceased and relatively minor chieftain, a young man who had since fallen on very hard times? It was a bit like showing up for a job interview years late, hoping they hadn't filled the position. When they finally locate the Ongirat encampment, Daysechin and his wife, Chotan, are overjoyed to see him. Far from turning him away, they welcome him warmly. Perhaps they saw in him the same strength and character that Yasuge had seen years before. Or perhaps they were just very honorable people who believed a promise was a promise, regardless of fluctuating fortunes. A rather refreshing attitude, all things considered. Daysechin speaks plainly. I have always known that you would return one day to claim Berta as your wife. Though others spoke ill of you and your prospects, I held firm. Words that must have been like balm to Temujin's ears after years of being an outcast. And Berta? She is now a young woman. The stories say she greeted him with grace and loyalty. The childhood betrothal, forged in diplomacy, now had the chance to become a true partnership. The wedding celebrations are arranged. It wouldn't have been a lavish, glittering affair by the standards of settled empires, but for the steppe, it was a significant and joyous occasion. Lots of roasted mutton, copious amounts of arag, storytelling, music from the Morin Khor, the horsehead fiddle, its melancholic melodies drifting across the plains. Now, every bride comes with a dowry. And Berta's dowry was something quite special, something that would prove far more valuable than a herd of sheep or a collection of fine silks. Her mother, Chotan, presented Temujin with a magnificent cloak made of black sable fur, a cloak of exceptional quality and rarity. Does that ring a bell? That stolen sable cloak of his mother, Hoelun, a symbol of lost status and past betrayals, now finds an echo in this new gift, a symbol of a reclaimed future, of new alliances, of hope. The universe, it seems, enjoys a bit of poetic symmetry now and then. Temujin, ever the pragmatist, ever the strategist, knows exactly what to do with this splendid sable cloak. He doesn't just hang it up in his gur to admire. Oh no, this cloak is an opportunity. He remembers his father's connections, the alliances Yasuge had cultivated. One of the most powerful of these had been with Togrul Khan, leader of the Karit tribe. Togrul had been Yasuge's Anda, his sworn blood brother. So, Temujin, with his new wife Berte, and accompanied by Jamuka, who was probably best man, in a nomadic sort of way, travels to Togrul Khan's mighty encampment. He presents the magnificent sable cloak to Togrul as a gift. Not just any gift, but a declaration. He is saying, in effect, my father was your Anda. I am my father's son. I honor that bond. I seek your friendship, your patronage. It was a masterful move. The ultimate re-gifting scheme, really, but with far grander political implications. That sable cloak certainly got around, acquiring more mileage than a seasoned diplomat's saddle horse. Togrul Khan is impressed. He remembers Yasuge. He sees the potential in this determined young man who comes to him not begging, but offering a gift of kings and reminding him of sacred oaths. Togrul accepts Temujin under his protection, acknowledging him as a valued ally. This is a huge step for Temujin. Suddenly, he has the backing of one of the most powerful leaders on the steppe. His small band of followers, joined with Jamuka's, now has a formidable patron. The boy who was once an outcast is now a player on the grand chessboard of steppe politics. Berta, his steadfast wife, is by his side through all of this. Her quiet strength, her loyalty, and of course her strategically invaluable dowry have been instrumental in this turning point. She will become his most trusted advisor, the mother of his heirs, the anchor of his household, through all the campaigns and upheavals to come. A good horse is essential on the steppe, but a good partner, priceless. So, a promise kept, a bride reclaimed, a powerful alliance forged, all thanks to resilience, determination, and a very fine sable cloak. It's a reminder that sometimes the threads of the past can be rewoven into a stronger future. The significance of gifts, the enduring memory of his father's connections, and the slow burn of nomadic ambitions are all coming together. As you settle into your own peaceful night, think of that satisfaction. The feeling of a plan coming together, of a long-held hope realized, of promises kept and futures brightened. It's a comfort as warm and encompassing as that sable cloak must have felt on a cool steppe evening. And sleep easier knowing your most valuable possessions are safe, and your alliances are hopefully less dependent on luxury furs. Rest deeply. The wind on the steppe has a way of shifting, doesn't it? One moment it's a steady, predictable companion. The next it whispers of change, ruffling the grasses and the calm surface of a deep friendship. Let's drift quietly into the combined camp of Temujin and Jamuka, where just such a subtle change is beginning to stir the air. For a time, their joint encampment was a picture of nomadic harmony and strength. Two powerful, charismatic young leaders, blood brothers, their followers intermingling, their herds grazing side by side. It must have felt like the dawn of a golden age for their people. Shared hunts, shared celebrations, shared plans for a future that seemed bright and full of promise. The creak of their saddles as they rode out together, the murmur of their voices in late-night council around the fire, these were the sounds of unity. But, as with many things, even the strongest bonds can be tested by the quiet pressures of differing natures. Temujin and Jamuka, though devoted Anda, were different men, with different ways of seeing the world and leading their people. Think of it like two skilled musicians trying to play a duet, but one prefers a lively folk tune and the other a more classical, structured melody. Both beautiful, but not always harmonious when played simultaneously. Temujin, forged in the fires of adversity and betrayal, valued loyalty and ability above all else. He promoted men based on merit, not on their lineage or noble birth. Shepherds, hunters, even former enemies who swore true allegiance, could find a place of honor in his retinue if they proved themselves capable and trustworthy. His camp was a place of opportunity, a bit like an open audition for talented individuals, regardless of their family tree. This made him incredibly popular with the common folk, the everyday herders and warriors who saw in him a leader who understood their struggles and rewarded their worth. Jamuka, on the other hand, came from a more established aristocratic background. He was a gifted leader, no doubt, charming and eloquent, but he tended to favor the traditional ways, the established hierarchies. He believed in the authority of noble bloodlines, the inherited right to lead. His camp, while powerful, perhaps felt a little more exclusive, more like a private club with a rather strict door policy. These differences, subtle at first, began to create a quiet friction. Followers would whisper comparisons. Some were drawn to Temujin's more egalitarian style, his focus on practical results. Others preferred Jamuka's adherence to tradition and his more flamboyant charisma. It wasn't a matter of right or wrong, simply a divergence in philosophy, like preferring your airag slightly more fermented than your friend does. Adding to this gentle undercurrent was a figure named Kokochu, also known as Teb Tengri. He was a shaman, a man of spiritual influence, and he began to speak with great conviction of Temujin's destiny. He would proclaim that the eternal blue sky, the supreme deity of the Mongols, favored Temujin, that he was chosen for great things. Such pronouncements, especially from a respected shaman, carried significant weight. It was like having the universe itself endorse your leadership candidacy. This naturally drew even more people to Temujin's side, those who wished to be aligned with a divinely favored leader. Jamuka, one imagines, might have found Teb Tengri's enthusiastic pronouncements a little grating. The stories tell of a pivotal moment, a quiet decision that marked the beginning of their separation. One evening, as they were deciding where to make camp, Jamuka suggested a location that was perhaps more advantageous for his own aristocratic followers, less so for the commoners who flocked to Temujin. Temujin, guided by his wife Berta's counsel and his own instincts, chose to lead his people in a different direction, to make his own camp. It wasn't a dramatic, angry split, not at first. More like a quiet parting of ways, a mutual if unspoken acknowledgement that their paths were diverging. Like two mighty rivers that had flowed as one for a time, now branching off to carve their own distinct courses through the vast landscape of the steppe. Many followers had to choose. Some stayed with Jamuka, loyal to his lineage and his particular brand of leadership. Many others, including some of Jamuka's own kinsmen and retainers, were drawn to Temujin's vision and made the journey to his separate camp under the cover of night. It must have been a somewhat awkward morning for Jamuka, noticing the sudden increase in available grazing space. This separation of the Anda was a significant event. It marked Temujin's emergence as a fully independent leader, with a distinct following loyal to him alone. The steppe, vast as it was, sometimes felt a little small for two such ambitious and capable men. Having two supreme leaders in one extended nomadic group is, as you can imagine, a bit like having two people try to steer the same horse, a recipe for confusion and quite possibly a sore back for the horse. The pull of ambition, the weight of differing philosophies, the subtle influences of advisors and prophecies, all these played their part. The bond of Anda was sacred, but the demands of destiny, or perhaps just deeply ingrained personality traits, were proving even stronger. It's a reminder that even the closest relationships can evolve and change, sometimes into something new and separate, each valuable in its own right. And as the stars emerge, one by one, in the vast, darkening sky, consider the nature of paths diverging. It happens in all lives, in friendships, in families. Sometimes it's for the best, allowing each individual to follow their truest course. There's a quiet acceptance in that, a peaceful understanding that change is a natural rhythm of life. Sleep now, little diplomat. May your own friendships navigate the changing winds with grace. And rest easy, knowing that even if paths diverge, the same stars shine down on everyone, no matter where their camp is pitched for the night. Listen closely. Can you hear it? It's more than just the wind whistling through the steppe grass tonight. It's the murmur of voices, a hum of anticipation, the rustle of felt and leather as people gather. It's the sound of a new title being spoken, a new responsibility being shouldered. Temujin is about to get his first taste of what it means to be a Khan. After parting ways with Jamuka, Temujin's following had swelled. His reputation for fairness, for rewarding merit, and for that certain indefinable quality of leadership that draws people in, had spread like wildfire across the plains. Clans and families, individuals and small groups, all began to see in him a leader who could offer security and a future in the often turbulent world of steppe politics. It wasn't just his skill with a horse or a bow anymore, it was his vision. So, in the year that scholars mark roughly as 1189, a significant event takes place. The leaders of the clans loyal to Temujin, along with various other supporters, gather for a Kurultai, a traditional Mongol assembly. Imagine a vast outdoor meeting, The jurs arranged in a great circle, horses tethered nearby, banners fluttering in the breeze. The air is filled with the scent of wood smoke and roasted meat, and the buzz of important discussions. It's here, amidst this gathering of his peers and followers, that Temujin is formally elected Khan. Now, this wasn't yet the grand title of Genghis Khan that would echo through history. This was a more localized Khanship, a recognition of his leadership over a specific confederation of tribes who had chosen him. But it was a monumental step. Oaths of fealty were sworn, those solemn promises of loyalty that bound warrior to leader, follower to Khan. He would have received symbols of his new office, perhaps a special standard or a ceremonial drum. The weight of leadership, once a shared burden or a distant aspiration, now settled firmly on his shoulders. It's a bit like finally getting the keys to the family chariot. Only the chariot is a nation of fiercely independent nomads, and the road ahead is unpaved, to say the least. Being Khan, Temujin quickly discovered, wasn't all about sitting on a comfortable felt cushion and having people bring you endless cups of airag, though that was probably a perk. It came with a heavy dose of discontents, as new promotions often do. His old Anda, Jamuka, was not particularly thrilled by this development. Perhaps he saw Temujin's election as a direct challenge, a usurpation of the natural order as he perceived it. The simmering rivalry, once a quiet divergence of paths, now threatened to boil over. And boil over it did. Jamuka, gathering his own loyalists and those who felt slighted by Temujin's rise, decided to make a statement. An unfortunate incident occurred, a skirmish between their followers, sparked by some offense, real or imagined. The stories vary, as they often do when tensions are high. Following this clash, Jamuka's forces gained the upper hand against a group of Temujin's people. In a particularly harsh act, Jamuka had some of the captured leaders from Temujin's side dealt with severely. The accounts say they were boiled alive in cauldrons. Now, we shall not dwell on such grim details as you drift towards sleep. It is enough to understand that this act was deeply shocking, even by the often harsh standards of steppe warfare. It was a clear message from Jamuka. He was not to be trifled with, and he viewed Temujin's new Khanship as illegitimate. For Temujin, this was a profound sorrow and a hardening lesson. The loss of loyal followers in such a manner, at the hands of his former blood brother, must have cut him to the core. It underscored the brutal realities of power and the terrible cost of disunity. This event, though grievous, did not break Temujin. Instead, it seemed to solidify his resolve. He understood that his small Khanship was fragile, that his people were vulnerable. He recognized the urgent need to consolidate his power, not for self-aggrandizement, but for the protection and security of those who had placed their trust in him. His focus on loyalty became even more intense, and his commitment to building a society based on merit, where such betrayals and cruelties would be less likely, deepened. He learned that leadership meant not just inspiring people, but also safeguarding them, a task that was proving far more complex than simply finding good grazing land. The early years of his Khanship were a period of constant struggle. He faced challenges from rival clans, internal dissent, and the ever-present threat from Jamuka, who had now become his avowed enemy. It was a crash course in crisis management, nomadic style. He had to be a diplomat, a warrior, a judge, and a provider, all while trying to keep his fledgling coalition from unraveling like a poorly woven rug. Being Khan, he might have mused, wiping sweat from his brow after a long day of arbitrating disputes over stolen sheep, is significantly more complicated than the brochures suggested. Yet, through it all, he persevered. He learned from his setbacks. He gathered a core of fiercely loyal companions, men like Borchu and Gelmi, who would become legendary figures in their own right. He was building not just an army, but a community, bound by shared purpose and a belief in his leadership. As the night deepens around you and the world outside grows still, reflect on the burdens of responsibility. Even the greatest leaders, the most celebrated figures, face moments of profound challenge and sorrow. There is a quiet dignity in shouldering those responsibilities, in striving to protect and unite, even when the path is fraught with difficulty. May your own responsibilities rest lightly upon you tonight, and find comfort in the knowledge that even in the face of discontent, resilience, and a steadfast heart can pave the way for a more peaceful tomorrow. Sleep well, little Khan. Hush now. Let the campfire crackle softly, its embers glowing like sleepy eyes. We're about to discuss something that might seem a little unusual for the wild, open steppe: rules. Yes, even in a land of endless horizons and fierce independence, Temujin, now a Khan with a growing number of followers and an equally growing list of challenges, began to realize something crucial. To build something lasting, something more than just a temporary alliance of convenience, you needed order. You needed laws. Imagine trying to organize a massive, ongoing outdoor festival where everyone brings their own livestock, sets up their tents wherever they please, and has rather strong opinions about whose horse drank from whose water bucket first. That was a bit like the situation among the various Mongol and Turkic tribes. Centuries of clan rivalries, blood feuds, and a general enthusiasm for appropriating each other's property, especially horses, made for a rather dynamic social environment. Temujin understood that if he wanted to unite these disparate groups into something resembling a nation, he couldn't just rely on his charisma or his skill in a disagreement. He needed a common framework, a shared understanding of right and wrong, a set of guidelines that everyone would, ideally, agree to live by. This was the beginning of what would become known as the Yasa, the great law of the Mongols. Now, the Yasa wasn't written down in a fancy leather-bound volume straight away, not in these early days. Many of its tenets were likely customary laws, traditions that had existed for generations, now being codified, emphasized, and crucially, enforced by Temujin's authority. It was less a dusty legal textbook and more a practical guide to not annoying your neighbors to the point of starting an interclan kerfuffle. What kind of things did this early Yasa address? Well, loyalty was paramount. Betrayal of one's Khan or one's comrades was a grave offense. This makes perfect sense when your entire society is built on personal bonds and mutual defense in a harsh environment. There were also rules aimed at fostering unity and reducing conflict between clans. For example, the widespread practice of bride stealing, a rather disruptive way to start a marriage and often a family feud, was strongly discouraged, if not outright forbidden under his evolving code. He also sought to regulate the sale of women, aiming to give them a more secure and respected position within the family and society. And then there was the matter of theft. On the steppe, a man's horse wasn't just transportation, it was his livelihood, his status symbol, his companion in arms. Horse theft was rampant, a constant source of irritation and bloodshed. Temujin's laws came down hard on theft of all kinds, but especially horse theft. The penalties were severe, designed to make even the most light-fingered nomad think twice. Suddenly, leaving your prize stallion unattended for a few minutes didn't feel quite so risky. The power of a good horse was finally getting some legal protection. The Yasa also touched upon practical matters of daily life, like hunting. To ensure that game was not depleted, There were regulations about how and when hunting could take place, promoting a more sustainable approach to using the resources of the land. There were rules about hospitality, about sharing water sources, about the conduct of warriors. Slowly but surely, a sense of order, a Mongol order, was being woven into the fabric of steppe life. One of the most profound aspects of Temujin's emerging legal framework was its ambition to create a unified Mongol identity that transcended old clan loyalties. Before, you were primarily a Taichud, or a Keriot, or a Jadaran. Temujin envisioned a world where you were, first and foremost, a Mongol, part of a larger nation, bound by a common law and a common destiny under a single Khan. It was a radical idea, really. Trying to get fiercely independent, often feuding, nomadic clans to agree on a unified set of rules and a shared identity was, as you might imagine, only slightly less complicated than teaching a wolf to herd sheep. Right, you can hear a grizzled old warrior muttering into his air rag. So now I can't even borrow my cousin's third best camel without a written request. What is the world coming to? The implementation of these laws wasn't always smooth, of course. Old habits die hard, especially when those habits involve a bit of light pillaging on a Tuesday. But Temujin was persistent, and his growing authority gave his decrees teeth. His justice was known to be swift and impartial, applying to noble and commoner alike, another revolutionary concept in a world often dictated by privilege. He wasn't just making laws, he was building a state, one rule, one judgment, one hard-won agreement at a time. Nomadic fashion choices probably weren't explicitly in the early Yasa, but one imagines a general improvement in social conduct might have led to fewer disputes over who had the most stylish fur-lined boots. As the stars begin to prick the darkening velvet of the night sky, consider the comfort of order. Think of the peace that comes from knowing the rules, from understanding your rights and responsibilities, from feeling secure in your person and property. The Yasa, in its own way, was aiming to bring that kind of peace to a very unpeaceful world. May your own world feel orderly and predictable as you drift off to sleep. Rest in the quiet assurance that clear guidelines and mutual respect can indeed bring harmony. Much like a well-understood bedtime routine soothes the mind for a night of peaceful dreams. Sleep deeply, little law-abider. The stars seem particularly bright and clear tonight, don't they? Almost as if they're watching a grand, intricate pattern being woven across the dark tapestry of the steppe below. A pattern of unification, slowly but surely taking shape, one carefully managed thread, or rather, one rival clan at a time. Temujin, armed with his new khanship and the emerging principles of the Yasa, is embarking on the monumental task of bringing all the Mongol-speaking peoples under his single white banner. This wasn't a gentle process of sending out invitations to a grand unity tea party, mind you. The steppe tribes were fiercely independent, proud, and had long, complicated histories with each other, often involving generations of spirited disagreements over grazing rights, horses, and perceived insults. Uniting them required a combination of shrewd diplomacy, strategic alliances, and, when all else failed, decisive military action. Temujin preferred diplomacy when possible. It was generally less wear and tear on the horses, but he was also proving to be an exceptionally gifted military strategist. His army, increasingly disciplined and loyal, was becoming a formidable force. He organized his warriors into a decimal system, units of 10, Arban, 100, Yagun, 1,000, Mingan, and eventually 10,000 Tumen. This wasn't just for easy counting. It created a clear chain of command, fostered cohesion, and allowed for remarkable flexibility on the battlefield. Officers were appointed based on skill and loyalty, not birthright. a radical departure from the aristocratic traditions of many rival clans, and a key reason for his soldiers' devotion. The Mongol art of war was something to behold, even from a safe, sleepy distance like ours. Imagine warriors who were practically born in the saddle, able to fire arrows with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed, turning this way and that. They were masters of mobility, of feigned retreats that lured overconfident enemies into cunning traps, of sudden, overwhelming envelopments. We won't linger on the clash of arms, but rather on the sheer artistry and discipline involved. It was like a complex, high-speed ballet, only with more armor and significantly higher stakes. The superiority of the Mongol horse, hardy and accustomed to the harsh steppe, was, of course, a crucial element in all of this. One by one, Temujin began to confront the rival tribes that had for so long kept the steppe fragmented and mired in conflict. There were the Jerkins, the Taichudes, his old captors, whom he dealt with firmly but fairly, often incorporating their warriors into his own forces if they swore allegiance, and many others. Each campaign was a calculated step towards his ultimate goal, a unified Mongol nation, strong enough to defend itself and prosperous enough to provide for all its people. A particularly significant and poignant chapter in this unification process was the final reckoning with the Tatars. These were the people who, you may recall, had treacherously caused the passing of his father, Yasuge, an act that had plunged Temujin's family into years of hardship. The desire to see this old wrong addressed was undoubtedly a powerful motivator for Temujin, but it was also a strategic necessity. The Tatars were a strong and hostile confederation, a major obstacle to lasting peace and unity on the eastern steppe. After a series of hard-fought engagements, the Tatar confederation was decisively broken. Temujin, in a move that was both pragmatic and symbolic of his desire to end old feuds by absorbing rivals rather than perpetuating cycles of vengeance, decreed that the surviving Tatars would be integrated into the Mongol people. It was a way of saying, this long and painful chapter is closed. Now we move forward, together, as one. Though one imagines the integration process had its share of awkward family dinners for a while. With each victory, with each alliance forged, Temujin's reputation grew. He became known not just as a brilliant commander, but as a leader who kept his word, who rewarded loyalty generously, and who was building something new and compelling. He was also beginning to form an elite bodyguard, the Keshig. These were not just guards, they were his most trusted companions, often the sons of chieftains he had defeated or allied with, serving at his side, a living symbol of the new unity and a training ground for future leaders. Temujin wasn't just collecting followers anymore, he was collecting former rivals and their brightest talents. His social circle was becoming remarkably diverse and surprisingly effective. The vastness of the steppe, once a patchwork of feuding territories, was slowly, methodically being organized, brought under a single vision. Complicated family politics still abounded. Many of these rival chieftains were distant cousins or connected by intricate marriage alliances. But Temujin navigated these treacherous waters with a deft hand, knowing when to be firm, when to be generous, and when to simply offer a reassuring cup of fermented mare's milk and talk things over. As the moon climbs higher, casting its gentle light on your own peaceful surroundings, reflect on how great endeavors are achieved. Step by step, challenge by challenge, with persistence and a clear vision. Even the most daunting task, like unifying a nation of fiercely independent nomads, can begin to feel manageable when approached with wisdom and determination. It's a bit like slowly drifting off to sleep, one gentle breath at a time, until you reach a state of peaceful rest. Sleep now, little unifier. May your own world feel harmonious and your plans unfold with grace. And remember, you don't have to conquer all your rivals before breakfast tomorrow. Can you feel a particular stillness in the air tonight? A hush of profound anticipation, as if the very wind over the plains is holding its breath. Something truly momentous is about to happen on the steppe, an event that will not only change the course of Temujin's life, but will ripple outwards to touch the farthest corners of the known world. We are approaching the great Kurultai of 1206. After years of tireless campaigning, shrewd diplomacy, and the steady application of his burgeoning yasa, Temujin had achieved what many thought impossible. He had united the disparate Mongol and Turkic tribes of the steppe under his leadership. The old rivalries, the endless cycles of feuding and raiding that had characterized life for generations, had largely been subdued, replaced by a new, overarching Mongol identity forged in shared struggle and loyalty to a single dominant leader. The patchwork quilt of warring clans was becoming a single vast, intricately patterned carpet. So, in the spring of 1206, a great Kurultai, a grand assembly of all the chieftains and commanders of the now unified nation, was summoned. Where better to hold such a historic gathering than by the headwaters of the Onon River, the very river near which Temujin had been born, the silent witness to his childhood struggles and his earliest dreams. It was a place of deep symbolic significance, a return to the source, to mark a new beginning. Imagine the scene. Thousands upon thousands of jers spreading across the plains like a city of felt and smoke, stretching as far as the eye could see. Herds of horses, cattle, and sheep grazing peacefully nearby, a sight that would have been unthinkable just a few decades earlier, when such a concentration of wealth would have been an irresistible invitation to raiders. Now, they were all part of one vast, orderly encampment. Banners of every color and design fluttered in the steppe breeze, but one stood supreme. Temujin's white standard, the Sulda, said to be imbued with his spirit and the destiny of his people. The air would have been thick with the aroma of roasting meats, the murmur of countless conversations in various dialects, the distant, haunting melodies of the Morin Kur, and the rhythmic chanting of shamans. These shamans, with Kokachuteb Tengri likely taking a prominent role, performed ancient rituals, seeking blessings from Tengri, the eternal blue sky, and the spirits of the land for what was about to transpire. It was a blend of solemn statecraft and profound spiritual affirmation. And at the heart of this immense gathering, Temujin stood. He was no longer just the Khan of a few loyal clans. He was the undisputed leader of a new, powerful nation forged from many disparate parts. It was here, at this historic Kurultai, that he was to be given a new title, one that would resonate through the ages. The assembled nobles, chieftains, and commanders, in a collective act of supreme recognition, proclaimed him Genghis Khagan, or, as it's more commonly known in the West, Genghis Khan. The exact meaning of Genghis is debated by scholars. Some say oceanic, implying a vastness like the sea. Others suggest fierce, strong, or universal ruler. Whatever its precise etymology, the implication was clear. His authority was now seen as boundless, his rule divinely sanctioned, his leadership paramount over all the peoples of the steppe. Choosing a new title is always a tricky business, isn't it? Supreme overlord of all he surveys and some bits he hasn't gotten to yet was probably deemed a bit too cumbersome for everyday use, and certainly for the banners. Genghis Khan had a certain ring to it, a resonance of power and destiny. With this new title came the formal establishment of the Mongol Empire. What had been a collection of nomadic tribes was now, officially, a state with Genghis Khan as its supreme head. The Yasa, his great law, which had been developing organically, was now formally promulgated as the foundational legal code of this new empire. It would regulate everything from military discipline to social conduct, from hunting practices to the administration of justice, ensuring that loyalty, order, and a unified Mongol identity were the bedrock of his rule. This wasn't just a coronation, it was the birth certificate of an empire. One can only imagine the emotions of the moment. For Genghis Khan himself, perhaps a sense of awesome responsibility, the culmination of a lifetime of struggle, a destiny fulfilled. For his followers, a surge of pride, of belonging to something vast and powerful, a feeling that the sky itself was their only limit. The wind that day, sweeping across the plains by the Onon River, seemed to carry his new name, his new title, to the farthest corners of the steppe, and indeed out towards the wider world, which was as yet blissfully unaware of the storm gathering in the heart of Asia. As the celebrations continued, with feasting and games and the reaffirmation of oaths, a new era had dawned. The boy once abandoned and hunted, the young man who had scrabbled for survival, had risen to become the oceanic ruler, the uniter of a nation. It's a rather extraordinary trajectory, wouldn't you agree? And as you lie warm and comfortable, on the verge of sleep, think of that sense of culmination, of a great destiny embraced. There's a quiet grandeur in the image of that vast assembly under the endless blue sky, witnessing the birth of an empire. It's a reminder that even the most ambitious dreams, pursued with unwavering resolve, can indeed take shape. Rest now, little emperor of your own dreams. The stars that witnessed that great Kurultai are the same stars watching over you tonight. May your own great plans come to fruition, and may your sleep be as vast and peaceful as the Mongolian sky. The wind now carries scents from lands unseen, doesn't it? Whispers of spices you haven't tasted, the murmur of languages unfamiliar to the ear, and the faint, distant echo of mountains far higher than any steppe dweller has ever imagined. Genghis Khan, having successfully unified the Mongol tribes and established his authority with the great Kurultai of 1206, now looks beyond the familiar grasslands. The world, it turns out, is considerably larger than even the vastest steppe. His first major ventures beyond the traditional Mongol territories lead him south and west, towards established kingdoms that had long histories, fortified cities, and, from the Mongol perspective, rather a lot of very tempting trade goods. One of the first significant challenges was the Western Xia dynasty, also known as the Tangut Empire. This was a prosperous kingdom situated along crucial parts of the Silk Road, a vibrant artery of commerce. Securing influence here wasn't just about expansion, it was about controlling these vital trade routes, ensuring the flow of goods and information, and perhaps collecting a reasonable toll for the privilege. Good fences make good neighbors, but good trade routes make for a well-funded empire. The Tanguts, however, were not nomadic folk living in easily transportable jars. They had impressive walled cities, formidable fortresses, and armies accustomed to a different style of engagement. This presented a new set of challenges for Genghis Khan and his warriors. While the Mongol cavalry was unmatched on the open field, city walls proved to be a rather stubborn inconvenience. You can't exactly outflank a 30-foot stone barrier on horseback. So, the Mongols had to adapt. They began to learn the art of siege warfare, a skill set not typically emphasized in nomadic curricula. This involved patiently surrounding cities, disrupting their supply lines, and gradually persuading them that opening their gates was a much more comfortable option than prolonged resistance. Genghis Khan, a lifelong learner, was essentially enrolling his entire army in advanced courses on urban deconstruction and diplomatic persuasion. 101. Further east lay an even greater power, the Jin dynasty of northern China. This was a vast, wealthy and ancient empire, far larger and more populous than anything the Mongols had encountered before. Early encounters with the Jin were complex, a mix of probing attacks, diplomatic maneuvering, and the gradual realization of the sheer scale of the undertaking. It turns out, some people don't just build walls, they build entire civilizations behind them, complete with intricate bureaucracies and very large armies. How peculiar, the Mongols must have thought, and also, how interesting. What was remarkable about Genghis Khan and his people during this period was their incredible capacity to learn and adapt. They were not just conquerors, they were assimilators of knowledge and technology. When they encountered new military techniques, such as sophisticated siege engines used by the Chinese and Tangut engineers, they didn't just try to overcome them, they learned how to build and use them themselves. Captured engineers, scholars, and artisans who possessed useful skills were often incorporated into the Mongol ranks, their expertise valued and put to use. It was a very practical approach. If you can't beat them, hire them and learn their tricks. The Yasa, that great code of laws, was also being adapted and applied in these new contexts, providing a framework for administering newly influenced territories and integrating diverse peoples. The ever-reliable Mongol horse was still the backbone of their army's mobility and logistical strength, though perhaps its riders were now occasionally dismounting to discuss trebuchet trajectories. And the importance of good intelligence, gathered by tireless scouts who ventured deep into unknown lands, became even more critical as the horizons expanded. Knowing what lay beyond the next mountain range or behind the next city wall was essential for planning and survival. These campaigns were not swift, easy affairs. They were long, arduous undertakings, stretching over years, testing the endurance and adaptability of the Mongol people to their limits. They learned to fight in deserts and mountains, to cross mighty rivers, to deal with climates and terrains utterly alien to their homeland. It was a period of intense learning, of growth, of the Mongol world expanding far beyond the familiar embrace of the steppe. As the velvet darkness of night enfolds you, think of that spirit of adaptation, of venturing into the unknown and learning from new challenges. Horizons expand, new landscapes appear, and with them, opportunities to grow and change. It can be a quiet adventure, this process of encountering the new and making it, in some small way, your own. Rest now, little explorer of dreams. May your own new horizons be filled with gentle discoveries. And sleep soundly, knowing that even the highest walls can be understood, one stone, one idea at a time. Let the night grow deeper now, so deep that the stars seem to pulse with ancient secrets. We're about to embark on a very long journey, much further west than perhaps originally planned, a journey sparked by what might charitably be called a misunderstanding of truly epic proportions. It's a detour that will change the map of the world. Having established his dominance over the eastern steppes and made significant inroads into northern China and the Tangut lands, Genghis Khan's gaze and his ambition turned westwards. Not initially for conquest, the stories suggest, but for trade. The Silk Road, that legendary network of routes connecting east and west, was a conduit for unimaginable wealth. Silks, spices, precious metals, new ideas. Genghis Khan, ever the pragmatist, saw the immense benefits of fostering peaceful commerce and diplomatic ties with the powerful empires of Central Asia. Chief among these was the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast and wealthy sultanate that stretched across Persia, Transoxiana, and beyond, controlling a significant portion of these lucrative trade routes. So, Genghis Khan dispatched a large trade caravan, laden with valuable goods, accompanied by envoys. Their mission was to establish friendly relations and open up formal trade agreements with the Shah of Khwarezm, Ala ad-Din Muhammad. It was a hand extended in peace and commerce, a perfectly reasonable proposal between two powerful rulers. A sort of, let's do business, shall we, on an imperial scale. Unfortunately, this well-intentioned caravan met with a disastrous fate at the Khwarezmian frontier city of Otrar. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, who happened to be related to the Shah's mother, had other ideas. Perhaps he was suspicious of the Mongols' intentions. Perhaps he was simply greedy and saw an opportunity to seize the caravan's riches. Whatever his motives, he accused the Mongol merchants of being spies, a rather classic pretext for impounding valuable goods and their owners. He had the merchants and envoys taken, and their goods confiscated. Most of them, numbering in the hundreds, were put to an untimely and unjust end. One managed to escape to bring the terrible news back to Genghis Khan. Now, in the world of international diplomacy, even in the 13th century, there are certain rules you just don't break. Harming or disposing of diplomatic envoys and peaceful merchants is very high on the list of things not to do if you wish to avoid annoying a powerful neighbor. It was a grave insult, a profound violation of trust and custom, and a direct challenge to Genghis Khan's authority and the honor of the Mongol people. The Yasa, his own law code, likely had some very strong opinions on the sanctity of envoys and the protection of travelers. Genghis Khan, upon hearing the news, reacted with what is described as controlled fury. He was, by all accounts, a patient man, but this was an outrage that could not be ignored. He made one more attempt at a peaceful resolution, sending a second set of envoys directly to the Shah, demanding that the governor of Otrar be handed over for justice and the confiscated goods returned. The Shah, in a display of astounding arrogance and poor judgment, not only refused, but also had the chief envoy of this second delegation shamefully treated and dispatched, while his companions also met unfortunate ends. It was, to put it mildly, a catastrophic diplomatic blunder. A memo regarding the inadvisability of provoking the man who had just successfully united all the warriors of the steppe and was currently learning advanced siege techniques clearly failed to reach the Shah's desk. This double insult left Genghis Khan with little choice, at least in his view and by the customs of his time. Honor demanded a response. The security of future trade and diplomatic missions depended on it. And so, the decision was made. The Mongol armies would march west, not for a small punitive expedition, but for a full-scale campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire. It was a detour of colossal proportions, a multi-year, cross-continental undertaking that would lead the Mongols through some of the most ancient and storied lands of Central Asia. He didn't just hold grudges. He took them on extensive, educational, and rather transformative road trips. The meticulous planning for this Western campaign began. Scouts were dispatched, intelligence gathered, armies mustered. The sheer logistical challenge of moving a vast Mongol army, with its tens of thousands of warriors, countless horses, and extensive supply trains, across deserts, over towering mountain ranges like the Pamirs and Tian Shan, was staggering. But the Mongols, masters of steppe mobility and organization, were uniquely equipped for such a task. Their endurance, their discipline, their ability to live off the land when necessary, all came into play. And as the stars wheeled slowly overhead, casting their cold, distant light on your peaceful slumber, Consider how a single act of folly, a grievous misunderstanding or misjudgment, can alter the course of history. A door slammed shut on diplomacy and trade became a gateway to one of the most extensive military campaigns the world had ever seen. Find comfort in the thought that even when events take an unexpected and unwelcome turn, leading down paths undreamed of, human resilience and adaptability can still forge a new, albeit different, way forward. Sometimes, the greatest detours lead to the most profound discoveries, even if they begin with a terrible sense of injustice. Sleep now, little traveler. May your own journeys be smooth, and all your envoys treated with the utmost respect. The starlight seems to stretch further tonight, doesn't it? As if it's trying to illuminate the vast, almost unbelievable expanse of an empire unlike any the world had seen before, an empire taking root under the steady, watchful gaze of Genghis Khan. The great detour into the west had, after immense effort and astonishing military campaigns, resulted in the Khwarezmian Empire being comprehensively dismantled and its territories absorbed into the burgeoning Mongol domain. The campaigns themselves were marvels of strategy and endurance. Mongol armies, often divided into multiple columns, traversed incredible distances, appearing where least expected, outmaneuvering and overwhelming their adversaries. Ancient, fabled cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, Merv, and Nishapur, centers of Islamic learning and culture, found themselves facing this new power from the east. We won't dwell on the harshness of these encounters, but rather on the sheer scale of them. These cities, one by one, opened their gates to a new era, as the saying might euphemistically go, an era now under Mongol sway. The world map was being redrawn with breathtaking speed. But Genghis Khan was more than just a brilliant military commander. He was also an organizer, a state builder. Conquering vast territories was one thing. Administering them, making them function as a coherent empire, was quite another. It's a bit like successfully hosting a very large and somewhat unruly dinner party. The real work begins when the guests decide to stay permanently, and you have to figure out who sleeps where and who does the washing up. One of the most ingenious administrative innovations was the yam system. This was essentially an imperial postal and relay service, a network of well-supplied stations, or urtus, established at regular intervals along the major routes of the empire. Fresh horses, food and lodging were available at these stations for official messengers, envoys, and authorized travelers. This meant that decrees from the Khan, intelligence reports, and diplomatic correspondence could travel across the vast empire with astonishing speed, hundreds of miles a day in some cases. The ever-present Mongol horse, the traditional symbol of steppe mobility, now became the engine of imperial communication, connecting the farthest flung corners of this new world order. It was the 13th century equivalent of high-speed broadband, powered entirely by horsepower and fermented mare's milk. Genghis Khan also understood the importance of trade. Having secured vast stretches of the Silk Road, he actively fostered commerce. Merchants were generally protected. Travel was made safer, once the initial vigorous introductions were complete, of course, and the flow of goods and ideas between East and West was, in many ways, stimulated under Mongol rule. He seemed to grasp that a prosperous empire was a more stable empire. Furthermore, within the bounds of maintaining order and loyalty to his rule, Genghis Khan generally practiced a policy of religious tolerance. He himself adhered to the traditional Mongol shamanistic beliefs, revering the eternal blue sky, but he recognized that his empire now included peoples of many faiths: Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Taoists, and others. Clergy and religious institutions were often exempted from taxation, and scholars from different traditions were welcomed at his court. It was a pragmatic approach. As long as you paid your taxes and obeyed the yasa, your spiritual path was largely your own concern. As he grew older, Genghis Khan naturally turned his thoughts to the future of the empire, to succession. He had four main sons by his principal wife, Berti, Yochi, Chagatai, Ogadai, and Tolui. Keeping a large family of ambitious and capable sons in agreement about who would inherit what was, as you can imagine, a delicate balancing act, even for the great Khan. He eventually designated his third son, Ogadai, known for his affability and generosity, as his successor to the position of great Khan, while also apportioning vast territories, or Ulysses, among all his sons, laying the groundwork for the Khanates that would later emerge. The Yasa, his great legal code, was intended to be the unifying constitution that would hold this vast family enterprise together. His final military campaign was against the Western Shah, the Tangut kingdom that had, in his view, betrayed an earlier agreement and failed to provide promised support. It was during this campaign, in the year 1227, that Genghis Khan, now in his 60s and having forged the largest contiguous land empire in history, felt his own strength begin to wane. He had set in motion forces that would reshape continents, connected cultures in ways previously unimaginable, and left an indelible mark on the world. As the silver light of the moon bathes your room, think of the immense effort of building something so vast, of laying foundations intended to last for generations. Even the greatest builders, the most tireless unifiers, must eventually rest. There's a quiet dignity in a legacy taking root, growing beyond the span of a single life, its branches reaching towards an unknown future. Sleep now, little architect of tomorrow. May your own foundations be strong and your dreams take flight. And find peace in the knowledge that even the grandest empires are, in the end, made of countless individual efforts, each one a small part of a much larger story. Let the night be utterly still now, as if the world itself is pausing for a moment of quiet reflection. A great fire, one that blazed across continents, is dimming, its earthly light absorbed back into the stars, into the memory of the land. Genghis Khan, the unifier of the Mongols, the oceanic ruler, passed from this world in the summer of 1227, during his final campaign against the Western Shah. He was around 65 years old. The exact circumstances of his passing and the location of his burial remain one of history's most enduring mysteries, shrouded in secrecy according to his own wishes and Mongol tradition. The story goes that his funeral cortege eliminated any witnesses encountered on its journey, and that the site itself was leveled by horses, its location known only to a select few, who themselves carried the secret to their own passing. He wanted to return to the earth of his beloved steppe, to become one with the land that had shaped him, without monument or marker, just the endless sky above and the whispering grasses. A quiet end for a man whose life had been anything but. And what of his legacy? It is, to put it mildly, rather complex and vast, like staring up at the Milky Way on a clear night, awe-inspiring, a little overwhelming, and composed of countless points of light and shadow. He forged the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. This Pax Mongolica, as it later became known in some regions, facilitated an unprecedented exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas between East and West along the reopened Silk Road. Gunpowder, paper, printing, the compass, these innovations traveled westwards more readily. Art styles, scientific knowledge, and cultural influences flowed in both directions. He didn't just conquer the world, he left it considerably more interconnected, albeit after a rather vigorous and often devastating round of introductions. His Yasa, the Great Law Code, provided a framework for governance that influenced successor states for generations. His military strategies and organizational skills are still studied. Yet, this unification and expansion came at an immense human cost in the regions that resisted, a truth that history also remembers. But here, in the quiet of your approaching sleep, we can hold these vast historical tides gently. We can marvel at the sheer scale of one individual's impact on the world, the story of a boy from a dispossessed family who rose to command millions and reshape the map. It's a reminder perhaps that history isn't just dates and events, but the collective story of human ambition, resilience, creativity, and the endless, often bewildering, dance of cause and effect. And somehow, contemplating these immense sagas from the safety of our soft beds can be oddly comforting. It puts our own daily worries into a different perspective, doesn't it? The vastness of time, the rise and fall of empires, the endless turning of the world, it all continues. And yet, here you are, safe and sound, ready for rest. Even the most turbulent history, when viewed from a peaceful distance, can soothe rather than stress. And as you sleep, remember you don't have to unify the steps before sunrise. Good night, little conqueror of dreams. If you enjoyed this sleepy journey through history, perhaps give a little nod to the algorithm, so others might find their way here too. Rest now very peacefully, knowing that your bed is secure, the night is calm, and the grand, tumultuous history of yesterday is but a story to guide you gently into the quiet of today's slumber. Sleep well.